Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, the most fact-driven, unbiased true crime channel. That's right. This is our weekly recap, and we had some crazy stuff this week. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn something. Have a wonderful day. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Crime Talk, and my name is Scott Reisch. Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so already, we'd ask that you please hit that subscribe button and then hit that little bell so that you receive notifications of when we go live or put up new content. First on the docket, where are the boys? Yes, the boys that we are referring to are Orson West and Orrin West, 3 and 4 respectively. The question comes down to, where are they? They seem to have disappeared without a trace. The young boys went missing shortly before Christmas, and in the week since, police have uncovered little as far as clues, and it's leading to a lot of frustration, not only to the adoptive parents, the biological mother, as well as the community, where highly trafficked corridors have signs saying, "Where are the boys?" Now, the West brothers are the adopted sons of Trezell and Jacqueline West. Orrin is 4, Orson is 3, and the couple say they began fostering Orrin and Orson back in 2018 and officially completed the adoption back in 2019. They also have 4 other children, 2 of whom are adopted and 2 more that are biological. All of those children have been taken into protective custody since the boys' disappearance. Both boys are about 3 feet tall and weigh about 40 pounds. They were last seen wearing black sweaters and dark-colored sweatpants. The boys were reported missing on the evening of December 21st, 2020. According to Mr. West, both the boys were playing outside their home in California City, a home that they had recently moved to from Bakersfield, California. Jacqueline, Mrs. West, was inside wrapping Christmas gifts, and Mr. West said he was outside collecting firewood. Mr. West says that he realized that he left the back gate open and he panicked and came inside and into the house. He then searched the house, both he and his wife, and once that didn't pan out, he got in a van, looked down the street in both directions, and it was getting dark and getting cold. They drove around the neighborhood for the boys until the sun began to set. At that point, Jacqueline decided it was time to call the police. What did the police find at the scene? Really, up to this point, is nothing. They have searched the home on multiple occasions. They have dug up spots in the backyard, but nothing would seem to provide any information as to where are the boys. To date, no one has been declared a suspect. According to the police, the parents are cooperative, that they've asked to take a lie detector test, but the police haven't said whether they actually ended up taking the test. The only thing that the police will say is that the Wests are being cooperative. Apparently, the Wests have relocated back to Bakersfield, which is also where the boy's biological mother lives. She is also assisting in the search. The bottom line is there's no suspects, there's no real lead or information that at least the police are talking about that has given any insight or hope that the boys will be found shortly. The California City, Bakersfield Police, as well as the FBI are actively investigating the case, and the investigators are apparently going over hours and hours of security video in the area. Hopefully that will lead to some clue. The police reiterate and want everyone to know that someone out there knows what's happened to these 2 young boys, and if they have any information, they should contact the California City Police at 760-373-8606. Now, I know there's a lot of channels out there that want to speculate. We are not going to do that because, frankly, we could sit here all day long and speculate, but there's no facts and there's no evidence at this point legitimately where we can raise questions about who should be a suspect or not. We will continue to follow this story, but it's simply a case that has not developed quickly, And to sit and speculate, it simply is not productive to anyone in this investigation. A Louisiana case that is an attack on the justice system. Okay, we have mentioned this in the past. One of the fundamental principles of our judicial system is that victims and witnesses have to be kept safe. You can't go retaliating against witnesses in a case. If that were allowed to take place, it would completely undermine our criminal justice system. Victims and witnesses need to be safe, not only before they testify in court, but while they're testifying in court and then thereafter. That's why the penalties for intimidating or tampering with a witness is so severe in most jurisdictions, because we can't have people trying to manipulate the system that way. Well, guess what? People in the criminal justice system, usually in custody, often refer to a quick little saying that says, no face, no case. What that means is that if the person making the allegations, if there's only one or two people there, points their finger at somebody, if they don't show up for court and can't make the identification, which is absolutely necessary in court, the case will normally be dismissed. But you can't go about it by harming witnesses, intimidating witnesses not to show up. Well, this case in Louisiana is an attack on our criminal justice system. So we have this guy by the name of Beau Cormier. He is 35 years old, and he is accused of sexually assaulting his niece. So what does Beau Cormier do? He hires a couple of his friends, Andrew Eskine and Dalvin Wilson. And what does he hire them to do? To go get rid of his niece. Okay? His niece, for goodness sakes. Wasn't bad enough that there's allegations that he's doing inappropriate things with a child, his niece. Now he hires people to go and try to get rid of her. Well, let's just say things didn't go as planned, but it still turned out very ugly. When Wilson and Eskine go to the residence of Mr. Cormier's niece, they knock on the door. And apparently they may have tried one other time, but it didn't quite work out that way. So they go to the front door, ask for the niece. The mother says, I'm the niece. And guess what? A fight, a struggle ensues. But unfortunately, the mother is killed by Erskine and Wilson. And what's even more tragic is that a neighbor was also killed in the attack. Brittany Cormier was killed, as well as Hope Nettleton, who is the neighbor. We do know that Erskine and Wilson both have confessed to their involvement, and Mr. Cormier has also been arrested, and they are all being held in custody on a $2 million bond. Now, we will give all three of these individuals the presumption of innocence, but as the district attorney says, this is a case where he believes that he can get a conviction, and he is not taking the death penalty off the case. The states that still have the death penalty, one of the aggravating factors is killing of a witness. You can't do that. What will complicate the case against Mr. Cormier regarding the allegations against his niece is I'm sure that the niece is going to be absolutely traumatized based upon what's already allegedly taken place, and then obviously the death of her mother. Brittany Cormier, the mother, must have realized that something was not correct when she identified herself as the daughter and knew, more than likely, that things may not end well, but she was going to do that to protect her daughter. We'll continue to follow that case just because I think it's going to be very interesting. And even with confessions by two of the three co-defendants, and it's unclear exactly how much these co-defendants were hired for, but as we learned the other day in Oklahoma, it's worth about $500. We'll see if these two individuals, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Eskine, received a lot of money for a life-changing event that will result in them more than likely spending the rest of their life in prison if they're lucky. A vigil for the missing West boys. That's right. Orrin and Orson West have been missing since December 21st of 2020. There's a reward for anyone that can provide information as to the whereabouts, and that reward is up to $100,000. Well, the biological family held a community candlelight prayer and vigil on Tuesday night for Orrin and Orson West, who've been missing from California City for over a month. The organizers are asking that individuals keep praying and hoping that the boys are okay and that they will be returned home safely. Now, we talked a little bit about this last night on our live program. There's lots of theories, and the police in this particular case have not identified anyone of interest that they're looking at as a suspect. And we also played a video that we talked about a month or so ago, and it shows, take a look at this. From the time that this child is walking down the street after just getting off a school bus, it literally takes about 6 seconds from the time that she is thrown in the car and abducted. Now, this particular case, the girl was recovered a short time afterwards, but needless to say, it must be very traumatic for her. But the point of the video is, look how quickly someone can potentially disappear just like that. So let's hold our theories in the West case until we have actual evidence. Now, the police did go through the yard yesterday again in California City with some imaging devices that allow them to look underground. No information's been released as to what they were looking for, why they went back to the house, or if they have found anything. We'll have to wait and see. As the evidence develops, we'll see if leads are developed for any suspects. Is Kyle Rittenhouse following the terms of his bond? Well, the prosecutors in his case don't think so, and they've asked a judge in Kenosha County to issue an arrest warrant. They allege that Mr. Rittenhouse has not kept up on the conditions of his bond, specifically that he has not informed the court that he has moved. The district attorney is asking that Rittenhouse's bond, which has already been set at and posted by friends of Kyle Rittenhouse via a crowdfunding campaign, is $2 million. They're asking that another $200,000 to make sure that he complies with all of the terms that are as a condition of his bond. This bond increase request came about as a result of a document that was sent by the court to the address where Kyle Rittenhouse was to be staying. Apparently, it was returned, basically stating that Kyle Rittenhouse did not live there. The district attorney got wind of that and said, hey, first of all, it's very unusual for somebody charged with 2 counts of murder and various other aggravated assaults to be free on the streets pending trial. And certainly, we want to know where he is at all times. The attorneys for Kyle Rittenhouse are objecting to the warrant as well as any bond increase. The attorneys for Rittenhouse state that when the bond paperwork was being signed, they were specifically told by the police department, do not put his physical address where he would be for his own safety. They have attorneys that are testifying to that and have identified the officers that gave that instruction. The attorneys have also said, we'll provide any of that information to the court as to Rittenhouse's location as long as it is kept under seal, i.e., which means no one other than the court and the attorneys in the case can get access to it. What that means is that perhaps there was a justifiable reason for not listing Kyle Rittenhouse's address because that's supposedly a safe house. Apparently, he has received threats to himself and his family members. The court is going to have to decide. Now, as you may recall, this is not the first time that there have been issues regarding bond and Kyle Rittenhouse. Apparently in Wisconsin, if you're 18 and you're with a parent, you can drink. You can't do that in Illinois, where Rittenhouse supposedly resides, but he was photographed in a bar, basically drinking and potentially putting up some signs on his fingers that would perhaps not endear himself to lots of people. Now, I said at the time, Mr. Rittenhouse needs to hang low and do whatever he is supposed to do as a condition of his bond. If I was his attorney, I'm sure his attorney is telling him this. You need to not get in trouble. You want to fly under the radar. Don't give them any reason to send you back to jail. Don't push it. This kid may or may not have a viable case. We'll have to wait and see how the evidence comes out at trial. The jurors in this case are going to have a very difficult decision. But the last thing that Mr. Rittenhouse or his attorneys need are a circus sideshow with him doing stuff that he shouldn't be doing. It's just against common sense. And frankly, it shows a bit of arrogance on Mr. Rittenhouse's part. We will have to wait and see how this develops, if the court grants the motion or denies it, and perhaps maybe brings Mr. Rittenhouse into court and admonishes him and says to Mr. Rittenhouse, you are on a very short leash. You better behave or I will throw you back in custody, because the bond will be so high that you will not get out unless you are found not guilty at trial. It's a high-profile case. Everybody wants to be on their best behavior because everyone is watching. New developments in the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell matter. That's right. The autopsy, the second, autopsy, you should say, as it relates to Tammy Daybell. The second autopsy performed on Tammy Vallow has been completed. Of course, the results have not been released yet, but is it a big break in the case, or is it nothing at all? Let's take a look. For those of you who are not familiar with Tammy Daybell and her death was originally ruled natural, but then her body was exhumed for further analysis after suspicion fell on her husband, Chad Daybell, and his new bride, that's right, Lori Vallow, just 2 weeks after her death. Well, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office say that they have received the completed autopsy for Tammy Daybell, the late wife of Chad Daybell, but they declined to release the findings in any way. They said that something would be forthcoming. Now, the contents of this report will not be made public at this time, as it is evidence in an open and ongoing investigation. That's according to the Fremont County Sheriffs. That is not unusual because there is an ongoing investigation. Now, as you may recall, the Fremont County District Attorney asked that the Attorney General oversee this case. Well, the new District Attorney asked that she be allowed to take over this case once again, thereby relieving the Attorney General of the investigation. What could that mean? Could this mean that the newly elected district attorney is out to make a name for herself by prosecuting a high-profile case? Or does it simply mean they're sending it back to the Fremont County? They are going to close their case, and it just makes more sense to have the new district attorney close the matter out. Well, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Mark Means, the attorney for Lori Vallow, immediately took to his Twitter account when asked about the completion of the Tammy Daybell autopsy report, and he simply stated first that his heart goes out to the family, but then you have to ask yourself, why is basically everything so difficult for the defense that you have to ask for the production of evidence, witnesses, and attorney-client recordings taking place? So he's completely rehashing all of the arguments that he's brought before the court and were shot down. Then he says, well, you have to also remember that the Fremont County elected coroner ruled that Mrs. Daybell's death, Tammy Daybell's death, was a death caused by natural causes. And finally, he states that this is nothing more than a nonsensical statement about a media teaser by the newly elected district attorney in an effort to taint the potential jury pool as it relates to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. So obviously no statement has been put out as it relates to the autopsy being completed by Chad Daybell or his attorney, Mr. Pryor, in any way. Now, we do know that there was a phone call at some point where Chad Daybell tells a friend that any possibility of him hurting or harming his wife in any way is just a bunch of crazy conspiracy theories. He stated on that phone call that he begged Tammy to go to the doctor because she was getting weaker, and then she just apparently passed away. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, if charges are filed. I would think that if charges are going to be filed in anything regarding Tammy Daybell, they're going to be filed rather quickly. And when I mean quickly, I would say within the next week. They've had all this time to build a case, the prosecutor has. They were simply waiting on the autopsy. If nothing is filed here within the next week, I would say that there's probably no case as it relates to the death of Tammy Daybell. We'll wait and see, but let's face it, they've had a lot of time to build their case. If they're going to do it, they should be ready to go immediately based upon the autopsy reports. If it was natural causes, then come out and state it immediately. That is just fundamental fairness through and through. Hopefully the district attorney that would be handling that matter is a straight shooter and that she will in fact do that if that is the case. If she's going to file charges, do it sooner rather than later. All right, that wraps it up for today. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next week on Crime Talk.